Evidence. What evidence do you have to support or justify the things that you believe? Now, we have reasons for why we believe everything we believe. If someone were to ask you, why do you believe in something simple like, I live in the United States, or I know what the weather will be tomorrow, or something more important like, I believe in the existence of God, or I believe in bail reform in criminal justice. If someone asked you why you believe those things, you will provide reasons and evidence. Now, your reasons can be much broader than your evidence. Your reasons might be some sort of illustration or analogy that you give. Your reasons might be some other beliefs that you already hold, which make sense in the overall picture of what you believe and why you believe what you do. So your reasons are much broader than evidence. Evidence is a kind of reason, but we base our reasons on evidence. So both reasons and evidence are the things that support or justify our conclusions and the things that we believe. Many times they're used interchangeably as if they're the same thing, but they're not. The way I understand it is that evidence is a kind of reason that you believe something, but we have many other reasons for believing things that are not necessarily evidence. Evidence is explicit, external information we provide to justify and support the conclusions we have. So here are a few differences between reasons and evidence. Number one, I said that evidence is a kind of reason. It is one of the reasons or provides reasons for why we believe the things that we do, but reasons are much broader than evidence. One of the differences between the two is that you base your reasons on evidence. You don't base your evidence on reasons. So when someone says, why do you believe what you believe? You might say, I believe what I believe because the latest scientific research supports my conclusion, or the latest discoveries in history back up the things I believe. But what you don't do is say, well, the latest discoveries in science are actually based on the reasons for my believing something. It's the other way around. Reasons are based on evidence, not evidence based on reason. So that's one difference. The other difference has already been implied in what I've said. Reasons are interior to us. They're internal. We think up reasons. Reasons can be the conclusion of some logical argument, or when we add together this belief and this belief, then we have a conclusion, and we did all of that by our reasoning powers, and we didn't point to something outside ourselves, which is what evidence is. Evidence is external, it's outside of us. It's something that other people can look to. They can do the same experiments. They can observe the same thing. They can draw their own conclusions. So whereas reasons are internal and we think those things up, and it could be based on logic or other illustrations or experiences or beliefs we have, evidence is something other people can point to and understand for themselves. Another difference is that reasons explain to a person why they should accept a claim, why they should believe this or that. Evidence is something you should understand as a fact, at least for the time being. At least in the moment of a discussion with someone, if you provide evidence, you're wanting them to believe that that evidence is factual. Now, it might be that the evidence you think is factual is actually not, but that's later on down the road of the discussion. At the moment, reasons are something interior, and they explain to another person why you believe what you believe. Evidence is something you expect them to believe as fact until proven otherwise. Now, there are a variety of kinds of evidence, and some evidence is stronger than others. Some evidence is irrelevant to a particular situation or circumstance. But all of us should believe things on the basis of some evidence, or at least the degree to which there is evidence is the degree to which we ought to hold certain beliefs. Now, it might be the case that we actually hold some beliefs in the absence of evidence, and that's legitimate as well. But for the moment, we're talking about different kinds of evidence. Sometimes people get irritated, they get angry if you ask them to provide evidence for the things they believe. Or you might get mad and upset if somebody asks you to provide evidence. A lot of times, the reason we're upset is because when someone asks us that, then we realize we don't actually know what the evidence is to justify our beliefs. We've never thought of it before. There might be evidence out there to support what we believe, but we just don't know it. And now we're irritated because someone is asking us to prove it and explain it to them. That's one reason we might get upset. The other, which is related, is just that if we don't have any evidence, we're not aware of any evidence that supports the things we believe, then we shouldn't be so assertive about it. We shouldn't demand other people believe the way that we do. We shouldn't feel like we have so much certainty about our beliefs if we can't even provide any evidence for them. In my experience over the years, I assumed that people who had a better education than I did, or people who had more of a history in a given subject. So let's say football or mechanics, automotive mechanics, or politics. I assumed that because I don't follow football, that a person who says that they believe this team or that team is the greatest team, I assumed that means they must have evidence that that football team is the greatest of all time. I assumed that if an automotive mechanic said that he thinks that Fords are the best vehicle over Chevys, that it means he has some evidence that Fords are better than Chevys. I assumed that someone who is a Democrat must have evidence that being a Democrat is more valuable, virtuous, or patriotic than being a Republican. I assumed that people who are very certain of themselves, who assert with sometimes a deep faith and foundation in their beliefs, I assumed that the degree to which a person is certain with conviction of a given belief means that they must have really good evidence for those beliefs. But that was really naive. Over the years, as I've learned about different areas of the world, as I've learned, for example, about maybe sports or automotive mechanics or politics or religion, it's not actually true that just because somebody is very brave, bold, assertive, and certain about their convictions and their beliefs, that that means they have a lot of evidence for those beliefs. It's just not true. We often believe things for a lot of reasons, only one of which is that we actually have evidence. And that is really showcased. That's really drawn out when you ask people to provide evidence for things they believe. That's when you realize that most people who are very assertive and certain about the things that they believe don't actually have evidence. It may hurt your feelings to realize that your favorite football team, maybe historically, is not the greatest team ever. It just depends on how you calculate points and scores and stats. Just like it might not be the case that LeBron James is the greatest NBA player of all time over Michael Jordan. That might hurt somebody's feelings. It also might be the case that Toyotas are better than Fords and Chevys. It just depends on how you run the numbers, the stats, the specs. But most people don't actually have all of the evidence, all of the stats and the specs to make a claim about which one is better than the other. They just believe it for who knows what reason. The same actually applies to beliefs about politics, ethics, and religion. Most people believe what they believe politically, ethically, and religiously, not because they've looked at all the evidence, they've looked at all the arguments for this religion or that political position, and then made some sort of educated, informed decision. That's not actually how things work. That's how it should work, but that's not how it actually works. And in critical thinking, what we want to do is try to make sure our conclusions, the things we believe, are based on sound reasons and evidence.